I'd like to bring a very, very special guest to the stage, Western Digital's President and Chief Operating Officer, Mike Cordano. Thank you. We've been having some interesting conversations backstage. Can I just throw some things out at you?
Sure, go.
So how about this? Over half the world's population is online now. Nearly 250 million new users coming online for the first time in 2017. 2.5 quintillion bytes of data created each day at our current pace, growing rapidly. 90% of that data of the world is being generated. And let me think. Every minute, 16 million text messages, 156 million emails sent, and last but certainly not least, 990,000 Tinder swipes every minute. There is so much going on. Have we just scratched the surface in terms of the amount of data that's going to be out there and generated?
Well, yeah. I mean, everything you talked about was user-generated, generally speaking.
Right.
Where we see things going is at a faster rate, we're going to see machine-generated data. So that we have some panels later, Internet of Things.
Right.
There's going to be at order of magnitude more data created from sensors, all connected around the broader ecosystem. We did a recent study with Accenture, and predicted by 2025 there'll be 75 billion connected devices. Many of those are sensors. So the rate of growth of data is going at a exponential rate. We see it going at around 40% per year if you think about capacity and creation of data.
Right.
But more importantly, as we'll get into here, the valuable data is growing at an even faster rate as people are learning how to sort of extract insights and monetize things.
Right, it's not linear,
No.
right? You're pulling, as you say, sensors. I think about
Correct.
self-driving, right? You're pulling all this information in quickly, and you have to come with some conclusion, a
Right.
smart conclusion, because
Right.
in case of self-driving cars, lives are at stake.
Yes. Well, and you think about the ecosystem. So a lot of that training happens in a core data center. So we're consolidating, aggregating data. We're running algorithms on that, getting insights, creating a template and a filter that we push to the edge that actually allows that real-time decision making, right? So there's a fantastic things going on, and it's that connection between the edge and the cloud that really allows these things to be enabled.
I mean, is the infrastructure there, Mike? I mean, this is your business.
Yes.
This is what you guys are doing. You know the demands of the customers that you work with in so many different industries represented here today. I mean, do we have it all yet?
No, the answer is no, and that's where the innovation comes in. So one of the things we're dealing with, obviously cost, because historically it was very expensive to retain data for long periods of time. So driving innovation that drives the cost of aggregating and storing data down is a big thing, but also the scale of data now is very different. So our ability to contend with data at scale is something that we, as data infrastructure providers, are working to, frankly, almost everyone in here is a customer of ours in some way. Our company is responsible for storing about nearly half of the world's data, if you think about the underlying devices. So we have to continue to innovate. We have to have faster, more capable storage infrastructure that runs at scale to enable all these great things.
When you look at different industries, what do you find as most striking in terms of, first of all, an example, I don't know whether it's Uber, I feel like we all talk about the Uberization of the world, where they've really figured out, take data and make it, this seamless app. It's not perfect, right? We'll say that. But is that the example that the world is kind of moving toward?
Well, I think, in fact, I think Waze is here today, right? I mean, you think about what's happening. I'm going to give them a plug.
Yes.
When you think about real-time aggregation of data, crowdsourcing of data, and then providing it back to me, I'm a big user of it, to help guide my travel and select the most efficient route. That is an example of using data to change people's lives, and in some cases, like Uber, a disruptive way.
Healthcare.
Yes.
Like, let's talk about different industries. I mean, that's one, you and I were talking, where there's so much still to be done.
Yes.
Just scratching the surface.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors in healthcare, because one of them, and frankly, is a policy issue. It's regulatory and HIPAA regulations in this country. If you look at the way healthcare data is stored, it's by institution. So you have all these silos of data, and we think about the technologies that we're developing, and you think about the ability to aggregate and then run sort of machine learning algorithms on that to, for example, cancer research. It's very difficult to aggregate the right data set. We're working with the University of California, San Francisco on a project where they are trying to aggregate breast cancer research data, mammography to do that. And if they were to do that within their own institution, it would take them decades to accumulate a sufficient amount of data. So now, how do you get data from the broader institutions in this country so we can make progress? So there's a lot of policy issues in healthcare that really that are impeding what can be done with technology.
Well, and that's a bigger story, and I think a bigger thing to discuss is that the data that's out there, like different industries have different data, but they can both benefit by using it together. Everybody, though, often still in their own silos.
Correct. Well, I think there's definitely their own silos, but if you look at the opportunity, and this is where blockchain is an interesting technology, because part of it is, how do I share data but have sufficient control that I'm sharing just what is required versus exposing other things that are more confidential in nature. So there are enabling technologies coming along that will allow that. I mean, blockchain is very interesting. We think it's going to be potentially an enabler of a data marketplace where you can exchange data in pursuit of these kinds of things. So institutions more broadly can provide data into a data marketplace. We think that's an emerging market that could be as much as $4 or $5 billion by 2025.
Right.
And the value of that data, and this again is an Accenture research report that we were involved with, could be as much as 3.6 trillion by 2030. So these things are happening very rapidly.
Talk to me a little bit about, when you and I had an earlier discussion, you liken the digital economy to the petroleum economy.
Well, yeah, I think people understand, for example, petroleum has inherent value.
Yeah.
Right? We're now looking forward to a world where data itself has value, and it is going to be traded in a way that has a recognized value associated with it. So I think it's an easy analogy when you think about that. Everybody understands that the crude oil has got a certain value by barrel. Data is going to replace that as the next sort of currency of our future.
This is talking about emerging technologies and how it's shaping the future. Talk to us about the importance of data in innovation.
Well, I think when you think about data and innovation, right, some of the advancements, whether it be healthcare, or I'll give you one good example. When we think about an industry like mining, right, you don't think they're doing any innovation in mining. Well, what they are doing is they're mapping old mines with autonomous drones. So there is the use of data in a real-time way, and this is Rio Tinto Mines, and some very classic company, and they are aggregating and mapping their data using this kind of technology. The other thing they're doing is they're actually saving lives, because as they do their blasting, they used to send people down there to go see what's going to happen. Now they can send an autonomous drone to go, record what's happening. So there's both a safety element to it, as well as there's an ability to sort of map this and understand what's happening and where the opportunities to explore further.
What do you see, as someone who talks to a lot of folks in various industries about data, as some of the uncomfortable moments that we'll have as we transition to even embracing the use of data more and more?
Well, I think the most often talked about uncomfortable moment is privacy.
Yeah.
And in this world...
Oh, no, we never talk about that.
Yeah, never hear about that, right? So like all things, there's good and potentially bad opportunities, right? As the society evolves and this data becomes more readily available, how do we treat that, and how do we have the right balance between using the data that's there to advance society in so many ways? Healthcare example is a great one. Versus saying, all right, there's a limit to that, and that's going to be a big policy issue for us to contend with.
Well, what do you see as potentially the balance? I mean, European regulators are certainly being, very forward about what they're doing. They're very active and aggressive in terms of reining in some of the use of data and certainly privacy concerns. What's the balance between regulating and overseeing our privacy, but also making sure that there's enough data freedom to innovate?
Well, yeah, and this is where I think being able to subsegment the data, right? When you look at the ability to sort of extract metadata, which may not be such a concern relative to individual privacy considerations,
right?
There are still insights there that will allow us to advance things. So I think this ability to sort of control and extract, and this is the blockchain example I talked about earlier. So if we can surface the elements of the data that actually allow us to make an advancement versus expose things that actually are more of a concern from a privacy standpoint.
So when you look at the future and the role of data, what kind of world do you see, and how quickly does it come? Well, I think, like with self-driving cars, I think we all thought it was going to be a much longer process, and that has certainly sped up.
Yeah, no, I think autonomous vehicles is an easy one for people to understand. And it is accelerating very quickly. I mean, when I talked to a colleague and we're on a conference call and he's reminding me that he was utilizing Tesla's self-driving capabilities while on Highway 101 in Northern California, it's a little scary, right? So we're already getting there. And again, some interesting research when you look at some of the benefits of this technology. If we had been able to deploy edge sensors across the entire fleet of autos in the US, we could have avoided as many as like 540 or so accidents per day. So you multiply that by, 365. That's a big opportunity to provide a safer, lower cost environment, right? If you think of the insurance industry.
Is that where we go? We have a world where we're just kind of surrounded by sensors that are constantly collecting data points to ensure our safety, to make sure we have the right ads in front of us, to make sure I'm getting the best healthcare possible?
I think that is where we're headed. So I think the interesting challenge will be is how to do that in a way that's got more positive than negative, right? So those are going to be the interesting questions for us.